who was kidnapped, tortured, and only released 2 years later because of global outrage. Today I want to tell you about a Korean composer by the name of Isang Yun. He was born in 1917 in a part of Korea that at the time was under Japanese rule. His father was a poet and a progressive thinker, and he really valued education and culture. His mother was a deeply, deeply spiritual woman, and she had a dream while she was pregnant of him about a wounded dragon hovering over a mountain. Now, in Korean symbolism, a dragon represents power, destiny, and transformation. But this was a wounded dragon, and so a lot of people said that this was definitely a foreshadowing of what his life was going to be. So he grew up in a house with literature, poetry, and definitely a lot of Korean music, and he was very musical, so he started music lessons. Later, he went and studied music in Japan. Now, remember, he was born in Korea, but it was under Japanese rule at the time. But he was very good, and so eventually he ended up studying music in Berlin, and he really absorbed the Western music and the Western techniques and the Western way of composing. But even as he studied Western, like orchestral and operatic tradition, he always stayed deeply rooted and connected to his Korean roots. Then the war broke out, and during the Second World War, Yoon was actively participating in anti-Japanese resistance, which, he was supposed to be on the side of the Japanese. They imprisoned him for 2 months, and this kind of seemed to start a cycle of his life, where there's this political oppression, then there's a personal suffering, and then an artistic resilience. This idea of struggle, of survival, really became a key focus of a lot of his music. Then he marries Lee Soo-ja, and they had a great loving relationship. She was so supportive of him, especially during his imprisonment and his exile. She was constantly trying to make sure everybody knew about this. They didn't have children. They were very involved in his artistic life and also in politics. And they moved to Germany, and that's where they lived during the 50s and 60s. He becomes really good friends with a lot of people, including Karl-Heinz Stockhausen and Igor Stravinsky. But during the 50s and 60s is really when he finds his own musical voice, his own identity. He himself describes his music as exactly in the middle between Eastern and Western music. He takes everything he knows of both cultures and blends them together. Then in 1967, while living in Berlin, he is kidnapped by the South Korean government, accused of sympathizing with the communists. He was taken and imprisoned. He was tortured. He was interrogated and sentenced to prison forever. Obviously, this shocked the international community. At this point, he had a name, and everyone that was anybody, many composers, artists, intellectual people, they came up, including Stravinsky and Stockhausen, and they spoke out for his release. It took 2 years, but eventually he was released because of the pressure that the government was under. Even while in prison, he continued to compose because music was an act of survival, and art can transcend suffering. And so he didn't stop, but then he was released. After his release, he returns to Germany, and he has, he's from Korea, and so there's this love of the land, but he has a lot of issues with South Korea because they tortured him. But because South Korea had a problem with him, now North Korea loved him because they love everything South Korea hates. And so he had this dual Korea, love-hate thing. Half of them didn't want him around, and the other half absolutely adored him. He tried to use this respect that he had established in North Korea, and he tried to be able to be one of the people to reconcile North and South Korea. Of course, this didn't happen, but his music often has themes of unity, of longing, but also of division. His music is deeply philosophical, influenced by Taoism, by Buddhism. His works emphasize flow and balance and coexisting of the opposites. In his work, there's room for breathing. There is room for natural movement, and you can hear some spiritual meditation. So his music, although it is Western as far as instrumentation and composition itself goes, his music, the soundscapes that he created, were vastly different of the things that you would hear at the same time. In his later years, he became internationally recognized, and in Germany, he received the Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany. He also was able to perform worldwide. His music was performed worldwide. He also taught many up and coming composers as well. Then in 1995, he died in Berlin, where he was given a grave of honor, which really showed people's respect and appreciation that he had earned in Europe. He was a survivor and a cultural bridge and a political symbol. He was also a visionary composer. Isang Yun once said that music should not divide but connect. And that is what he tried to do his entire life with everything that he stood for, and especially through his music, is to connect the Eastern world and the Western world, also North Korea and South Korea. And his music is different and interesting. Go and listen to something by Isang Yun.